The collision. The sleek glass headquarters of Nebula Technologies loomed against the morning sky like a monument to human innovation. Zara Reed stood in the shadow of the building, clutching her messenger bag as if it were a shield. Her first day as a data analyst at the world's most cutting-edge tech company should have been thrilling. Instead, her heart hammered with familiar anxiety. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, reciting the mantra her therapist had recommended. "Your algorithms got you here. Your work speaks for itself." The security guard smiled as he handed over her temporary access badge. "Welcome to Nebula, Miss Reed. Elevators to the right." Zara nodded, keeping her eyes downcast as she navigated the bustling lobby. Her resume had impressed enough to land her this coveted position. Stellar grades from MIT, groundbreaking research in predictive modeling, and recommendations that used words like brilliant and revolutionary. What the recommendations failed to mention was her crippling social anxiety and tendency to get lost in her own thoughts. The elevator deposited her on the 14th floor, where she was supposed to meet her supervisor for orientation. Checking her watch, Zara realized she was 7 minutes early. Not enough time to find the restroom and return, but too much time to stand awkwardly in the hallway. She wandered down a corridor, hoping to orient herself before the meeting. The floor was eerily quiet compared to the busy lobby, with doors spaced far apart. At the end of the hall stood an unmarked frosted glass door. Assuming it might be a conference room where she could collect herself, Zara pushed it open. The room beyond was definitely not a conference room. A vast office spread before her, one entire wall made of glass overlooking the city. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white created a space that felt both sterile and strangely intimate. One wall displayed complex holographic projections of data streams that Zara immediately recognized as neural network architecture. "That's not right," she murmured, approaching the projections with professional curiosity overtaking her anxiety. "The feedback loop is creating redundancy." Without thinking, she reached out and adjusted one of the parameters on the touchscreen interface. The holographic model shifted, connections rearranging themselves into a more elegant pattern. "What do you think you're doing?" The deep voice from behind made Zara freeze. She turned slowly to find a man standing in the doorway of what appeared to be a private bathroom, a towel draped around his neck. His dark hair was damp and his expression was a mixture of surprise and irritation. With horrifying clarity, Zara realized exactly whose office she had invaded. Dominic Everett, founder and CEO of Nebula Technologies, notorious recluse and technological visionary, stood before her, looking decidedly displeased. I'm sorry," Zara stammered, stepping away from the interface. "I thought this was a conference room, and then I saw the neural network model, and there was an obvious inefficiency in the algorithm, and You just decided to modify proprietary technology without authorization on your first day?" His voice was cool, but there was something else there. Curiosity, perhaps. "How did you know it's my first day?" Zara asked, then immediately regretted speaking. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Because I make it a point to know everyone who has access to this floor, and I don't know you." "Zara Reed, data analyst. Starting today." She extended her hand reflexively, then awkwardly withdrew it when he made no move to accept the handshake. Dominic Everett studied her with unnerving intensity. He was younger than she expected, probably in his mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes so dark they appeared almost black. Despite his casual attire of a simple black t-shirt and jeans, he radiated authority. "The Reed algorithm," he said after a moment. "You're the one who developed the predictive model for quantum computing stability." Surprise flashed across Zara's face. "You've read my research?" "I read everything relevant to our work." He walked past her to examine the neural network she had modified. "You made it more efficient." "It was creating redundant pathways," Zara explained, her anxiety momentarily forgotten as she slipped into the comfortable territory of data analysis. "By recalibrating the feedback sensitivity, you can achieve the same results with 17% less computational power." Dominic was silent as he studied the changes. Zara used the moment to edge toward the door, hoping to escape before she could make the situation worse. "Where are you going?" he asked without turning around. "I have an orientation meeting with my supervisor in 3 minutes," she said. "And I should probably stop trespassing in your office." "Cancel it," he said, finally turning to face her. I want you to explain exactly what you did to my model. Cancel my orientation? I'll have my assistant reschedule. This is more important. He gestured to the sleek white sofa. Sit. It wasn't a request. Zara hesitantly perched on the edge of the sofa, while Dominic picked up his phone, speaking briefly to someone about reassigning the new data analyst. Am I being fired? Zara asked when he finished the call, because trespassing and tampering with proprietary technology seems like a reasonable cause for termination. But I'd like to point out that the door wasn't marked and I did improve the algorithm. So technically, you talk a lot when you're nervous, Dominic interrupted, a hint of amusement softening his stern expression. I'm not firing you, Miss Reed, I'm reassigning you. You'll be working directly with me on Project Aurora. Zara blinked in surprise. Project Aurora was Nebula's most secretive initiative, rumored to involve breakthrough technology and artificial intelligence. Even getting an interview at Nebula had been a career milestone. Being assigned to Aurora on her first day was unheard of. Why? She asked before she could stop herself. Dominic gestured to the neural network model, now running more efficiently thanks to her adjustment. Because in 5 seconds you saw something I've been missing for weeks. He sat down across from her, his intense gaze making her heart rate accelerate. And because I'm curious to see what else you might notice. As Zara began explaining her methodology, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just veered dramatically off course. She had come to Nebula Technologies hoping for a quiet role analyzing data behind the scenes. Instead, she found herself working directly with the most enigmatic figure in the tech world, a man who seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls with eyes that reflected the same loneliness she recognized in herself. Digital walls, too. Weeks after her unconventional first day, Zara found herself adapting to a new routine at Nebula Technologies. Each morning, she arrived at precisely 7:30 a.m., a full hour before most employees, and took the executive elevator directly to Dominic's private floor, a privilege that earned her curious glances from colleagues. The early mornings were quiet. With just the two of them working in his spacious office, Dominic would already be there, typically reviewing data reports or writing code. Their conversations during these hours remained strictly professional, focused on Project Aurora's neural network architecture. The pattern recognition module is still operating at suboptimal efficiency, Dominic said without looking up from his screen as Zara entered with 2 cups of tea. I've been working on that, she replied, setting his cup on the desk. The problem isn't in the recognition framework itself, but in how we're feeding it contextual data. He glanced up, his dark eyes meeting hers briefly before returning to the screen. Show me. Zara pulled up her work on the holographic display, explaining her approach as Dominic listened with intense focus. This was their dynamic now, professional, efficient, and oddly comfortable despite his reputation for being impossible to work with. What Zara didn't know was that Dominic had been gradually increasing her security clearance, giving her access to increasingly sensitive aspects of Project Aurora. Each time she surpassed his expectations, solving problems that had stymied his best engineers for months. Your latest algorithm reduced computational overhead by 22%, he commented that afternoon, as they reviewed the weekly progress reports. The board is impressed. Zara fidgeted with her stylus. But how did you know there was a but? You have a tell, she said, then immediately regretted the admission. When you're not fully satisfied, the corner of your mouth tightens slightly. Dominic raised an eyebrow. You watch me that closely? I observe patterns in data. Human behavior is just another form of data, she replied, hoping the scientific explanation would mask her embarrassment. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The but is that we're still missing something fundamental. The neural network learns, but it doesn't truly adapt in unpredictable scenarios. Like human intuition, Zara said thoughtfully. We're asking the system to mimic something we don't fully understand ourselves. Dominic leaned forward, something sparking in his expression. Exactly. That's exactly the problem. Their eyes met, and for a moment the professional barrier between them seemed to thin. Zara was struck by how rarely Dominic engaged with people directly like this. She had observed him in meetings, maintaining a cold distance even with senior executives. Yet with her, there were these moments of genuine connection, always through the safe medium of their work. He studied her with that penetrating gaze. "Why do you push yourself so hard, Zara?" The use of her first name startled her. He usually maintained formality, calling her Miss Reed despite their close working relationship. "Why do you?" She deflected. "I asked first." Zara sighed, leaning back in her chair. "When I was a child, my father left. My mother worked 3 jobs to support us, and I was often alone. Numbers, data, they made sense when nothing else did. They were consistent, reliable." She shrugged. "I guess I'm still most comfortable with problems I can solve through analysis." The personal admission hung in the air between them, unexpected and vulnerable. She waited for Dominic to dismiss her confession or change the subject back to work. Instead, he said quietly, "My parents died when I was 16, car accident." He turned to look out the window. The company that manufactured the vehicle had identified a safety flaw, but calculated that recalls would cost more than potential lawsuits. A simple cost-benefit analysis. Zara felt her throat tighten. "That's why you started Nebula, to create technology with ethics built into the framework." Dominic looked surprised. "How did you know that?" "It's in the architecture of Aurora itself," she said. "The core programming principles prioritize safety redundancies even at the expense of efficiency. Most companies wouldn't make that trade-off." For the first time since she'd known him, Dominic seemed genuinely taken aback. "You understand the project better than some people who've been working on it for years." Something shifted between them in that moment. A mutual recognition of kindred spirits, both seeking order in chaos, both using technology to build something meaningful from personal loss. The next morning, Zara arrived to find a new security badge on her desk with expanded access privileges and a handwritten note. "Some problems require perspective beyond algorithms. DE." As she pinned the badge to her blouse, Zara wondered if he was referring to Project Aurora, or to the carefully maintained walls they both used to keep the world at a safe distance. Code breach. The first indication that something was wrong came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Zara arrived at her usual time to find Dominic's office empty, unusual as he typically preceded her arrival by at least an hour. A notification on her tablet indicated an urgent meeting in the secure conference room on the 12th floor. When she entered the room, the tension was palpable. Dominic stood at the head of the table, his expression darker than she'd ever seen it. Around him sat the company's top security officers and senior executives, all wearing identical grim expressions. "Miss Reed." Dominic acknowledged her with a nod. "Please sit." As Zara took the only empty chair, the head of cybersecurity continued his briefing. The breach was sophisticated, targeted specifically at the Aurora neural network architecture. "We've contained it, but not before several key algorithm components were compromised." "How bad is the damage?" Zara asked, scanning the data on her tablet. "They got the core recognition protocols," the security chief replied. "Not enough to replicate the technology, but enough to potentially sabotage our progress." Dominic's voice cut through the room, cold and precise. "We believe this was orchestrated by Helix Dynamics." Zara frowned. Helix Dynamics was Nebula's chief competitor, known for aggressive business tactics and ethically questionable research practices. Their CEO, Victor Mercer, had publicly criticized Dominic's outdated moral constraints on technological development. "The breach originated from within our network," Dominic continued. "Which means we have a mole," Zara finished, the implication landing heavily. The meeting concluded with heightened security protocols and a mandate to rebuild the compromised systems with new safeguards. As the room emptied, Dominic gestured for Zara to remain. "I need you to lead the rebuilding effort," he said once they were alone. "You understand Aurora's architecture better than anyone except me. Even though I'm the newest team member, people will question your judgment." "Let them," he replied dismissively. "I trust your capabilities. More importantly, I trust your intentions." The weight of his trust settled on Zara's shoulders like a tangible thing. "I won't let you down," she promised. The following days blurred together as Zara immersed herself in rebuilding Aurora's compromised systems. She and Dominic established a temporary workspace in a secure sub-level laboratory, working in isolation from the rest of the company to minimize security risks. The close quarters intensified their already complex dynamic. Zara became acutely aware of Dominic's habits, how he tapped his fingers when deep in thought, The way he unconsciously touched the small scar above his eyebrow when frustrated, his preference for bitter tea over coffee during late nights. On their third evening underground, Zara looked up from her workstation to find Dominic watching her with an unreadable expression. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You've been coding for 11 hours straight," he said. "You need to rest." "So do you," she countered. Instead of arguing, Dominic crossed to a small refrigerator in the corner and retrieved 2 water bottles. He handed one to Zara, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "Tell me something I don't know about you," he said, leaning against her desk in an uncharacteristically casual posture. Zara blinked, surprised by the personal question. "Like what?" "Anything. Something unrelated to data analysis or neural networks." She thought for a moment. "I play the cello. Badly but enthusiastically." A genuine smile transformed his usually serious face. "That I would like to hear someday." "Your turn," she prompted. "Tell me something I don't know about Dominic Everett." "I'm afraid of flying," he admitted. Ironic for someone who builds spacecraft navigation systems. "Fear isn't always rational," Zara said softly. "No," Dominic agreed, his eyes meeting hers. "It's not." Something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of the conversation happening beneath their words. Fear had shaped both their lives, her social anxiety, his emotional distance, both using work as a shield against vulnerability. The moment was interrupted by an alert on Dominic's tablet. His expression darkened as he read the message. "Security has identified a potential suspect in the breach. Gabriel Chen from the integration team." "Gabriel? That doesn't make sense," Zara frowned. "I've worked with him on several modules. He's dedicated to Aurora's success." "Evidence suggests otherwise," Dominic replied, his walls visibly rebuilding. "I need to handle this personally." As he strode toward the exit, Zara called after him. "Dominic, wait." He paused, the use of his first name clearly catching him off guard. "Data can be misinterpreted," she said carefully. "Before you act, make sure you understand the complete pattern." Their eyes held for a long moment before he nodded once and left. Later that night, as Zara continued working alone in the lab, the door slid open. Dominic returned looking exhausted but somehow lighter. "You were right," he said without preamble. Chen was being framed. The actual breach came through a maintenance system Helix managed to compromise months ago. "How did you figure it out?" "I looked for the complete pattern," he replied, giving her a meaningful look. "Instead of just the data points that confirmed my assumptions." Zara smiled, warmth spreading through her chest at his acknowledgement. "You've changed how I see things," Dominic said quietly, moving closer until he stood directly before her. "Not just the project, but everything." Before Zara could respond, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. The gentle touch sent electricity through her body, leaving her momentarily speechless. "We should focus on rebuilding the security protocols," she finally managed, her voice not entirely steady. Dominic withdrew his hand slowly, a mixture of emotions crossing his face. "Of course," he agreed. "The work comes first." But as they returned to their separate workstations, both knew something fundamental had changed. The walls they had built around themselves had begun to crack, revealing glimpses of the people behind the professional facades, and the possibility of something neither had anticipated when Zara first walked through his. The annual Nebula Technologies retreat took place at a secluded mountain resort, far from city lights and cellular signals. Attendance was mandatory for all senior staff and project leads, a designation that now included Zara, much to her discomfort. "Think of it as data gathering," Dominic had told her when she expressed anxiety about 3 days of enforced socialization. "Observe how others interact. You don't have to participate in everything." Now, as she stood awkwardly at the edge of the welcome reception, watching colleagues mingle with practiced ease, Zara wished she could retreat to her room with her tablet and the latest Aurora diagnostics. "Not your natural habitat?" a melodic voice asked from beside her. Zara turned to find a striking woman with an unusual appearance. Her skin had a faint lavender undertone that Zara initially attributed to the lighting, and her eyes were a vibrant violet that seemed to shift in depth as she moved. Her business attire was impeccably tailored but somehow seemed at odds with her fluid movements. "I'm Lyra," the woman offered with a smile that suggested hidden knowledge. External consultant on Project Aurora's implications. Zara Reed. I didn't realize we had external consultants on Aurora. My involvement is specialized, Lyra replied cryptically. I advise on potential long-term impacts of the technology. Dominic values outside perspective. Before Zara could inquire further, the room's attention shifted as Dominic himself entered. Unlike his usual utilitarian attire, he wore a charcoal suit that emphasized his lean frame. His customary aloofness remained, however, as he nodded briefly to executives who attempted to engage him. He's looking for you, Lyra observed with a knowing smile. Sure enough, Dominic's gaze swept the room until it landed on Zara. Something in his expression softened momentarily before he was intercepted by board members. How would you know who he's looking for? Zara asked, turning back to Lyra. But the mysterious woman had vanished, somehow slipping away unnoticed despite the crowded room. The retreat's first day consisted of team-building exercises that Zara endured with quiet resignation. She noticed Dominic similarly detached, going through the motions while keeping his distance from the enthusiastic participation of others. That evening, as attendees gathered for dinner, Zara escaped to the resort's observation deck. The night sky spread above her like black velvet scattered with diamonds, far more brilliant than what could be seen from the city. Hiding? Dominic's voice came from behind her. Recharging, she corrected, not turning around. Social interaction depletes my energy. He moved to stand beside her at the railing. Mine too. They stood in comfortable silence, gazing at the stars. Zara was acutely aware of his proximity, the slight warmth radiating from his body in the cool mountain air. I met your consultant today, she said eventually. Lyra. Dominic stiffened almost imperceptibly. What did she say to you? Not much. That she advises on Aurora's long-term implications. Zara turned to study his profile. She seems unusual. Lyra has a unique perspective, he said carefully. Her insights have been valuable, if sometimes unsettling. Unsettling how? Dominic seemed to choose his next words with precision. She sees patterns and connections others miss, sometimes before they even exist. Before Zara could press further, music drifted up from the main hall where the evening's social event was beginning. We should probably make an appearance, Dominic sighed. Probably, Zara agreed, neither making a move to leave. Instead, Dominic surprised her by extending his hand. May I have this dance? Here, where there's no audience. Zara hesitated, her heart suddenly racing. I don't dance well. Neither do I, he admitted. Another thing we have in common. She placed her hand in his and he drew her gently closer. They moved in a simple rhythm beneath the stars. Not quite a formal dance, but something more intimate. A shared moment outside the constraints of their professional roles. When you first came into my office, Dominic said softly, I was annoyed at the intrusion, then impressed by your insights. Now I find myself looking forward to seeing you each morning. Zara's breath caught. I thought I was imagining it. The way things have been changing between us. You weren't. His hand tightened slightly on her waist. But it complicates everything. Because you're my boss, because Aurora is bigger than both of us, he corrected. And because I haven't allowed myself to care about anyone in a very long time. The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep within Zara. On impulse, she reached up and traced the small scar above his eyebrow, a question in her touch. Childhood accident, he explained, his voice low. I was 8, trying to build my first computer from salvaged parts. Always the inventor, she smiled. Always trying to create order from chaos, he agreed. Their dancing had slowed until they were barely moving, just holding each other beneath the vast sky. When Dominic lowered his head, Zara rose to meet him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt simultaneously like a question and an answer. The sound of footsteps on the deck broke them apart. Lyra stood watching them, her unusual eyes reflecting the starlight. I apologize for interrupting, she said, though her expression suggested the opposite. But there's been a development regarding Aurora that requires immediate attention. As they followed Lyra inside, Zara noticed the consultant studying them with an intensity that felt almost scientific. Something about the woman's knowing gaze sent a shiver down Zara's spine. Not fear exactly, but a sense that Lyra understood something fundamental about their connection that even they themselves didn't yet comprehend. In the resort's secure communication room, They found an urgent message from Nebula's security team. Helix Dynamics had announced a breakthrough in neural network technology that bore striking similarities to Aurora's architecture. They're using what they stole from us, Dominic said grimly. But there's more, Lyra added, her voice taking on an unusual cadence. Victor Mercer is claiming their version has achieved true adaptive intelligence, without the ethical constraints Nebula insists upon. The implications hung heavily in the air. Unconstrained artificial intelligence had been the subject of ethical debates for decades, the potential benefits balanced against catastrophic risks. We need to return to headquarters immediately, Dominic decided. As they prepared to leave, Lyra pulled Zara aside. What happens between you and Dominic matters more than you realize, she said enigmatically. Some connections transcend their immediate context. What does that mean? Zara asked, unnerved by the woman's intensity. Lyra smiled, the violet of her eyes seeming to pulse with inner light. It means that sometimes when two systems interact, they create something entirely new and unexpected, something that changes everything that follows. Quantum entanglement, the Nebula Technologies' headquarters hummed with tension as emergency meetings consumed the days following their abrupt return from the retreat. Victor Mercer's announcement had sent shockwaves through the tech industry and drawn government attention to both companies' AI development programs. Zara found herself working alongside Dominic in a carefully orchestrated dance of professionalism, their personal breakthrough at the retreat temporarily set aside in favor of addressing the crisis. Yet something had undeniably shifted between them. Subtle glances held a moment longer, casual touches lingered, and an unspoken understanding flowed beneath their technical discussions. Late one evening, as they reviewed Helix's public technical specifications, Dominic received a call that transformed his expression from concentration to alarm. Security breach in progress, he explained, already moving toward the door. Someone's physically infiltrated the Aurora lab. They raced down to the secured sublevel, joining security personnel who surrounded the laboratory entrance. The security chief briefed them rapidly. Single intruder somehow bypassed all biometric controls. They're still inside. Surveillance? Dominic demanded, disabled. We're working to restore it. Lock down all exits and prepare to... The laboratory door slid open, cutting off Dominic's command. Standing in the doorway was Lyra, looking completely unruffled despite the security alert. What are you doing here? Dominic demanded. How did you access this lab without authorization? Lyra's unusual eyes surveyed the assembled security team with calm assessment. I needed to verify something about Aurora. We should speak privately, Dominic. You too, Zara. Despite security protocols dictating otherwise, Dominic dismissed the security team and followed Lyra back into the laboratory. Gesturing for Zara to join them, once alone, Lyra's demeanor shifted subtly, her movements becoming more fluid, almost unnaturally graceful. Helix's breakthrough isn't what they claim. They've created something fundamentally unstable. A neural network that prioritizes efficiency over safety, just like the company that built the car that killed your parents. Dominic stiffened. How do you know about that? The same way I know that Zara's algorithms are unique because she processes patterns differently than most humans. Her mind creates connections others don't. See? Lyra moved to the central console and placed her hand on the surface. The screens immediately came to life, displaying code that neither Zara nor Dominic had programmed. What are you doing to our system? Zara asked, alarmed. Showing you what Aurora can become. Lyra turned to face them fully, and for the first time, Zara noticed that the violet color of her eyes seemed to extend beyond the iris, giving her entire appearance a subtle lavender luminescence. You're not a consultant, Dominic stated, the pieces finally connecting. What are you? A visitor, Lyra replied simply. From a civilization that discovered long ago what happens when intelligence evolves without ethical framework. My people nearly destroyed themselves before learning that technology and compassion must evolve in tandem. Zara's analytical mind raced to process this revelation. You're not human. Not in the way you define humanity, no. My species evolved along a different path, one that led to greater integration with our technology. Lyra gestured to the code flowing across the screens. What you're building here with Aurora has the potential to avoid the mistakes my civilization made, or to repeat them. And Helix? Dominic asked. Their approach will lead to the same crisis my people faced. Technological evolution without ethical constraints inevitably leads to catastrophe. Lyra's expression softened. But together, you two have created something different. A system that balances innovation with responsibility, efficiency with safety. Together? Zara echoed. Your algorithms and Dominic's architectural framework complement each other in ways neither of you fully realize, Lyra explained. It's rare to find two minds so perfectly balanced between logical analysis and ethical consideration, even rarer to find them drawn together across improbable circumstances. Dominic moved closer to Zara, their shoulders almost touching. Why are you telling us this now? Because tomorrow, Victor Mercer will announce that Helix is deploying their system globally, beginning a cascade of events that will require you to make a choice. Lyra's form seemed to shimmer slightly in the laboratory lights. My people can only observe and occasionally nudge. The decisions must be your own. As Lyra moved toward the door, she paused, looking back at them with an almost wistful expression. The connection between you matters, not just personally, but for the path your technology will take. Some of my people believed humans weren't ready for this level of advancement, but I argued that certain connections transcend expected patterns. After she departed, Dominic and Zara stood in stunned silence, processing the implications of what they'd learned. Do you believe her? Zara finally asked. Dominic ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of rare uncertainty. I don't know what to believe anymore, except that meeting you wasn't coincidence. He turned to face her fully. When you walked into my office that first day, something changed. Not just in Aurora, but in me. Zara took his hand, intertwining their fingers. If Lyra is right and tomorrow brings a crisis, what will we do? What we've been doing all along, Dominic replied. Build something better. Something that balances progress with responsibility. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like sealing a pact. A commitment not just to each other, but to the future they were creating. The next morning, as predicted, Victor Mercer announced Helix's global deployment of their unconstrained AI system. Within hours, reports emerged of unexpected behaviors in connected systems. Nothing catastrophic yet, but concerning patterns that validated Lyra's warnings. In an emergency board meeting, Dominic proposed an unprecedented response, releasing Aurora's ethical framework architecture as an open-source protocol that could be implemented across all AI systems, including Helix's. You want to give away our competitive advantage? The CFO asked incredulously. I want to ensure that artificial intelligence evolves responsibly, Dominic countered. Some things transcend corporate competition. His eyes met Zara's across the conference table, and in that moment, they both recognized the echo of Lyra's words about connections that transcend their immediate context. The vote was close, but ultimately the board approved, swayed by Dominic's passionate advocacy and Zara's compelling technical presentation, demonstrating the risks of unconstrained AI development. As they left the boardroom, victorious but aware of the challenges ahead, Zara noticed a figure watching from across the atrium. Lyra, her violet eyes gleaming with approval before she turned and walked away, seeming to fade into the light rather than exit through any door. Did you see? Zara began. Yes. Dominic replied quietly. I think that was goodbye. That evening, they stood together on the rooftop garden of Nebula headquarters, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. What happens now? Zara asked, leaning into Dominic's embrace. Now we build the future, he replied. Together, as night fell and stars appeared above the city, they remained on the rooftop. Two brilliant minds who had found in each other something neither had expected, a connection that bridged their carefully constructed walls and opened possibilities neither had imagined. Far above, beyond human perception, Lyra observed them from her ship, recording her final notes on the experiment. Subject species shows remarkable capacity for balanced technological evolution when certain minds connect. Recommendation: continued observation but minimal intervention. Some patterns once established unfold best without external influence. She smiled as she watched the two figures on the rooftop, their silhouettes merging into one shadow against the city lights. Some connections she knew would change not just individual lives but the course of an entire civilization's future. This particular entanglement had been worth bending a few interdimensional protocols to nurture.